And I think we'll be starting very shortly anyway, so that'll be great. Perfect. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining us. This is our next session on education, evidence-based education. So we've got a great lineup of presenters who are going to tell us a little bit about the research and the projects that they've been working on in the last little while. So I'm very excited to introduce them all. I'm excited to listen to their presentations, and I hope that you're all very engaged and ask lots of questions because I'm sure they would like to tell us all about what they've been doing the past little while. I'm firstly going to introduce Junjie. Junjie is a student at Lanzhou University. He is going to present a systematic review to us on distance education from kindergarten to year 12 pupils. So that'll be really interesting. He works mostly in the public health centre. So let me see if I can get this working. Yeah, Junjie, do you want to share your screen? And then hopefully we'll be able to see your presentation.
Please wait a minute.
That's okay. That's all technology that we're getting used to.
Okay.
That's great.
Hello, everyone. My name is Junjie Ren. I'm from Lanzhou University. Today, I feel honored to participate in this meeting and make a speech. What I'm sharing with you is a systematic review about distance education. This research was completed under the guidelines of Dr. Guo and Professor Yang, and we are trying to publish this article on campus. Okay, from here, we can see that distance education has been valued and developed by governments all over the world, especially in recent years, due to the COVID-19 and the advantages of distance education, flexibility, convenience, and content availability. Starting from China, distance education has been vigorously promoted around the world as a temporary alternative to traditional education. And in 2021, the World Economic Forum issued a document saying that during the COVID-19 epidemic, nearly 1.6 billion teenagers and children left the classroom at most. At the same time, online course enrollment numbers more than doubled in 2020 and increased by 32% the following year, peaking at 189 million. So does it work? We included 51 trials and made a meta-analysis with random effect model. The results show that on academic achievement, distance education has a low effect on K-12 students. It means that compared with traditional education, distance education can slightly improve students' academic achievement. Uh, Specifically, in language and STEM courses such as English, Chinese, and mathematics, distance education has medium effect and low effect respectively. In countries with different levels of economic development, the effect of distance education in developing countries is more significant. Uh, and On non-academic achievement, the result of meta-analysis shows that compared with traditional education, K-12 students in distance education have higher learning motivation, self-efficacy, and self-learning ability. In conclusion, distance education has great value in the education of K-12 students. However, in this paper, we have not considered the effect of distance education in different study ability or other factors, and still need a lot of original uh, researches to study them. In addition, we didn't evaluate the quality of the included studies, which we will complete in the follow-up study. The above is the whole content of this report. If you have questions or are interested in this study, you can contact me by this email. Thanks for your listening.
Yeah,
Okay, that's all.
thank you. There's definitely one question here for you anyway. If you're happy to stay on and listen and try and answer it. Um, so Rebecca has asked, how do you define motivation, attitude, interest, self-efficacy, and self-confidence? It seems like these constructs could overlap depending on the definitions. So yeah, I guess how did you come up with those categorizations from each of the papers when you were doing your review?
Uh, Sorry, I didn't hear you clearly. Can you say it again?
Yes, of
Uh,
course.
uh,
Um, of course. So you're defining motivation, attitude, interest, self-efficacy, and self-confidence. How did you define those different attributes? And how I guess so Rebecca's asking that these constructs seem that they could overlap depending on your definition. So yeah, how did you categorize these?
uh, about this uh, non-academic achievement in different studies, they always use some test or some um, coroner questionnaire to um, to test their motivation or self efficacy or their attitude. And I have read a study. They use um, they use they use that tool like uh, uh, they used a special tool uh, to record their highlights to and to examine their um, attribution.
That's
That's all.
great. Thank you so much, Junjie. Thank you for explaining that. Personally, I found that, the fact that developing countries benefited more from distance learning or distance education, I found that really interesting. So maybe that's something that, something that has benefited us out of the COVID pandemic in particular, and that's evidenced in your review. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to the next presentation. So I'm going to call up upon, it was meant to be Megan Austin, but Joseph Taylor is going to present to us now with their research on, on the 5E instructional model. Having a quick look at his slides beforehand, it looks really, really interesting and something that I'm very interested in myself. So Joseph partners and works in partnership with American Institutes for Research, and he's based down in Colorado Springs. So I guess the work that they've been doing is with educational research organizations has been interesting, and a lot of their work is obviously evidence-based. So we're really excited to hear about this new instructional module. Thanks very much, Joseph.
Thank you, Jane. Are you seeing my screen okay?
Yes, we are.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you and welcome everyone. I'll be speaking today, as Jane indicated, in place of Megan Austin, but this work was done by a larger team of folks, including at AIR, including the PIs, Josh Blannon, Ryan Williams, and of course, Rebecca Steingut, my colleague, was very helpful in pulling together some of the findings that I'm going to present today. So the gist of today's talk is we're going to be presenting some findings, some synthesis findings related to the 5E instructional model. And if you're unfamiliar with the 5Es, the 5E stand for engagement, exploration, explanation, elaboration, and evaluation. And hopefully that will advance. Can you see my cycle of circles now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. So these, here are the 5Es again with a little bit of elaboration about what students and teachers are doing at each stage. But without belaboring that, I'll just mention that this instructional model, this sequence is based, it has its roots in cognitive science, it has its roots in social constructivism, and it has been used now for the better part of 30 years to help design curricula, to design state and national standards. So it's become, from its origins, become quite ubiquitous internationally. And if you'd like to read more about the 5Es, their origins in cognitive science, social constructivism, I provided one of the seminal works that describe the 5Es, the Bybee et al. 2006 paper. And if you have access to the slides, that link does work to go out to the free paper. So our aim in the study was to conduct a rigorous systematic review and meta-analysis of effects of the 5E model, particularly for students in grades pre-K-12. And in the larger project, we're going to be looking at these effects on STEM achievement, to include science and mathematics achievement, but also motivation outcomes. For today's study, however, to keep it brief, I'm going to focus just on the effects on science education outcomes. So at the highest level, we have, in the analysis that we'll be presenting today, 92 effect sizes that are nested within 43 studies. And the average effect size, unweighted average effect size across those 92 is 0.62 standard deviations, and I provided the confidence interval around that average effect. And there's been an age-old question related to the 5 E's in terms of, well, how many E's do you actually need for the positive effect to manifest? Do you need all those E's? Are some E's more important than others? So to address some of those questions that have lingered, one of the moderator analyses that we're conducting is looking at different implementation of the 5 E's or their variants. Interventions that include only 3 E's to include the explore, explain, and elaborate. Those types of interventions are eligible, as well as interventions that use the 7 E's. And if you look at the E's there in the parentheses, the 7 E's just add an elicit and an extend step to the core 5 E's that are in the middle bullet there. But to make a long story short, one of the things that we were trying to explore is, do average effects differ based on how many E's are included in the intervention? And just looking at this descriptively, again, these are unweighted averages. There does appear to be a difference in average effects based on how many E's are included. But we're about to present the results of some more sophisticated analyses that weight these effect sizes by the effect size precision, et cetera. So moving to that, before we draw too many conclusions from these differences, the more formal moderator analysis included some statistical controls for those comparisons. So we conducted a meta-regression analysis where we regressed the study effect sizes on intervention characteristics such as 3E, 5E, 7E. And that meta-regression employed random effects weighting, and it also employed robust variance estimation to account for the fact that within studies, effect sizes have a statistical dependency. And some brief results from that meta-regression are in this table. We grand mean centered these independent variables so that intercept, there, the B coefficient there, is the weighted average effect size across all the studies. We see that it's very similar to the unweighted average point, and it comes out to be 0.6 standard deviations, which is statistically significant. You might also notice the coefficients for 7E and 5E, which compare the average effects for those interventions to 3E interventions. And the pattern holds in terms of 7E and 5E interventions having, on average, larger effects, but those in the weighted average, those differences shrink quite a bit. In fact, they shrink enough to be statistically insignificant, at least with the power that we had in this analysis. And those comparisons among the 3E, 5E, and 7E interventions were controlled for intervention length in this model. So just some quick high-level conclusions. It appears that the 5E model based interventions and its variants, 3E and 7E, have positive, moderate, and statistically significant effects, averaging around 0.6 standard deviations. And we also saw that the differences in the unweighted average effects shrink quite a bit when subjected to controls and when weighted, precision-weighted averages are used coming out of the meta-regression. So we have a number of things that we still want to do on the project, other moderators that we want to explore. We would like to see whether effects differ on average across students' grade bands. We would like to explore to see whether when 5E interventions are coupled with teacher professional development that is aimed to support the implementation of the 5Es, whether there's a value added in terms of larger effects. And also we would like to explore whether the characteristics of the outcome measures are somehow moderate the size of these effects. And I brought that one up because I don't know if folks noticed an interesting result in the moderator analysis where intervention length is negatively associated with effects. And one of the wonderings we have, and it's a direction for future research, is whether there's a correlation between intervention length and the breadth of the outcome measure. So it could very well be that the longer interventions are also using broader outcome measures that are less sensitive to treatment effects, and we might be seeing some of that happening here, because this result, as it stands, might seem a little bit counterintuitive. So those are some of the things that we want to look into in the future to extend this work. So I'm probably at time, so I want to thank everyone.
Thank you so much, Joseph. That was really interesting for me. Going into all of that analysis and talking about your different controls and things. I'm interested to see how your work develops as you've described to us. I think as a teacher, my background is in primary school teaching, so I'm interested to see how that the dichotomy of teacher professional development impacts upon the effect sizes. And I think as well, as a qualitative researcher, I'm always interested, are you gathering any like qualitative data alongside this, or is it purely quantitative, particularly in the sort of teacher professional development aspect of things?
We are trying to collect information about the duration of the professional development, some of those other characteristics.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much. Sarah has asked a quick question in the chat box. She is asking, were there common student outcomes measured in the studies that you analysed?
And what was can you repeat that, Jane?
Yeah, of course. Were there common student outcomes measured in the studies you analysed?
I would say that the modal situation for science outcomes are subject matter achievement tests in science.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions that anybody else has from our group, or if there's any other questions that anybody from the audience has, you can put them in the chat box and I can pass them on to Joseph at the end. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end of this session to answer some questions too. But for now, I'm going to keep things moving because we are on time at the moment, so that's great. So we'll keep going, and I'm going to ask if Jan, if you can come up and present your slides, that would be great. If you can share your slides. Dan is she's a student at Lanzhou University as well, so we're very excited to have her on. It's great to have students presenting as well. It's a real introduction into the I guess the world of presenting your results and things, and making your research real and applicable to real life. She's going to present a systematic review on summative and formative assessments. So again, as a teacher, that's really, really interesting to me. So I'm really excited to listen to your presentation, Dan.
Okay. I share the slides.
Perfect, that's great.
Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Duan. I am a graduate student of Lanzhou University. Let's share together now. The title of the presentation is Efficacy of Formative combined with Summative Assessment in Medical Teaching, Systematic Review. Compared to summative assessment and formative assessment alone, FA plus SA has achieved better results in medical teaching, but there is no clear conclusion on how well student performance and overall literacy have improved. This study used meta-analysis to investigate the effects of FA plus SA versus SA in medical professional courses in order to provide an evidence-based basis for improving the quality of medical teaching. And 44 RCTS were included, including 5,212 students. And its meta-analysis results showed that FA plus SA could improve theoretical performance. SMD equals 1.1 1.13, scale operation performance SMD equals 1.24, and the comprehensive score SMD equals 1.18. And analysis of questionnaire results showed that FA plus SA improved students' comprehensive ability in class teaching and clinical teaching more obviously, including stimulating learning interest and improving learning ability, improving teamwork ability. The differences were statistically significant. And the literature quality evaluation showed that the overall quality of the included studies was not high, and the basis final plot indicated that the included studies had publication basis. Sensitivity analysis was conducted by excluding lectures with low research quality, and the results showed that the results of this meta-analysis were relatively stable. And current evidence shows that FA plus SA is superior to SA with better teaching quality and effect. The number and the quality of studies on the comparison of FAs plus SA and SA in medical courses are limited, and the literatures in other languages have not been retrieved. There was large heterogeneity among studies, which may be caused by the differences in subjects majors, course content, and the theoretical assessment content, as well as the large differences in sample size. Therefore, the above conclusion needs to be verified by more high-quality studies. That's the end of my speech. Thank you for listening.
Oh, thank you so much, Dan. That was really, really interesting. I think you've definitely, given us a good overview from what you could find in your own language. I would be really interested to see how that conclusion holds up, like you've said, with other studies when they're translated into, Chinese, into Mandarin or Cantonese, or for you to analyze, how that matches up with your conclusion. And I think, yes, as well, the heterogeneity, it's always difficult to deal with that in terms of sample size. So, but you've made a really great start, and I'm excited to see what the results are, when you get more studies. So thank you so much. If there's any questions, obviously, for Dan, please ask those in the chat box. I'm having a look at that now. So thank you so much. And any comments about any of the other presentations, I'll probably leave to the end, just for continuity's sake. So thank you so much, Dan. That was really, really interesting. We'll keep moving on because we're on time. I think we're ahead of time, actually, which is great. So I'm going to ask Sofie if you can come to the floor and present your presentation. That would be great. So while you're getting your slides shared, I'm just going to introduce Sofie. So Sofie works for VVOB. She's going to present on young children and their gender inequalities. Sofie, she's a global strategic research advisor, and her PhD was in economics of education. So she mainly conducts evidence-based research in education, of the labour market, and then lifelong learning as well. So all really interesting subjects. And she also conducts impact evaluations in lower and middle income countries. So really important work, Sofie, and I'm very excited to listen to your presentation and listen to the research that you've been conducting. We can see your slides and everything, so that's great. You're all set up, ready to go, hopefully.
All right. Do I have to take it to the full screen, or is that something that you do?
No, if you could take it to the full screen, that would be great.
All right.
Thanks very much.
Okay, good day to you all. Thank you so much, Jane, for the good introduction. So I can skip that part already. Yeah? I have the honors today to tell you a bit more on gender responsive or transformative pedagogy, in short, GRP for ECE. It's an intervention that we conducted in the ECD sector in KwaZulu-Natal, that's South Africa, between January 2020 and December 2021. Literature emphasizes that when it's about gender, that you target at best early in the childhood, so target interventions at the young children, because societal values and norms are actually shaped in these very young phases of life. For example, gender identity or gender stereotypes that we form are actually already settled by the age of 7. Gender stereotypes then in turn contribute to gender discrimination, gender-based violence. And this has, of course, long-lasting influences on children's beliefs, relationships, attitudes, and behavior. So it's not something that I have to emphasize. Indeed, it calls for proper timing of intervention in early childhood education. So what has been done in the GRP for ECE project? Well, in the first instance, there was a collaboration with the Department of Basic Education in South Africa, the VVOB and the Stellenbosch University, to have this toolkit, a South African approach to it, this toolkit developed on gender transformative pedagogy. Teachers and school leaders from 103 pilot schools in the ECD sector in KwaZulu-Natal were then trained using this toolkit in a 3-day workshop. Participants were also coached after the workshop, for example, in professional learning communities. And 2 times a month, they also received tips and tricks over WhatsApp. Now, I have to say, besides the pilot phase, there was also other types of material developed, like videos for parents, which is all actually open access. So this is open educational resource, and you can just Google on it and access all the materials. We have commissioned an evaluation study, and Mtenta Research Consulting and Services evaluated the GRP for ECE intervention in 84 of the 103 pilot schools. Impact study was based on a mixed methods. First of all, we have here the quasi-experimental study, the structured questionnaires, commissioned at baseline, endline, treatment and control groups. In total, we could reach 372 ECD practitioners, and the findings that I will present involve 230 of those ECD practitioners. Then we have also in-depth interviews, a small sample of it. At the baseline, we interviewed the treatment group only, 6 SMT, which is actually school management team, and 15 teachers. They were actually interviewed again, so 2 times the same persons at the end line, and we lost their 2 teachers. And we also conducted site observations. We did the site observations only in the end line study, but we indeed targeted the treated and the control centers together. In total, 87 centers that we watched and observed. 8 GRP domains were assessed. We actually had research focused on 3 evaluation domains. The first one was teacher beliefs or gender stereotypes on gender. Then we had supportive environment and child gender normative behavior. We had this actually included in all of the 3 domains of methods. In the quantitative study, the questionnaire included questions, of course. In the interviews and also in the site observations, the 8 GRP domains is very linked actually to the supportive environment, which we also assessed with the questionnaires. Largest effects of the intervention, the GRP for ECE intervention, was found actually on the teachers and on the children. With regard to teachers, we had actually 6 key questions driving changes, and I'm gonna read them from my paper here. There are some jobs that only men or women should do. A boy should not behave as a girl. There are only 2 genders, men and women. I let children form their own groups in class, even if that means girls only play with girls and boys with boys. Men are not suited to being teachers of young children, and it is okay for boys to dress up like a princess or a nurse. We actually found the largest effects on those questions at the endline study and in treatment group compared to the baseline and the control group. It appeared, however, for the teachers hard to change the teachers' implicit views, and therefore we actually had the question that gender is determined by nature or at birth. We couldn't actually find anything there. With regard to the children, it was mostly related to the play of children within classes, and I'm gonna read something from the interviews that actually proves how this was formed in reality. Previously, boys and girls did have different interests in playing materials and play areas. However, after the training, the practitioners encourage children to play with all available toys. For example, a girl can play with a car and a boy with a doll. There were many more examples, but these are the most prominent ones. We also find some promising effects on the supportive environments. These findings were also confirmed by the independent site observations. So actually, quite a promising, what works at the Global Summit, quite a promising intervention. And I have to say today there is effort from the government to finance themselves scaling up from 1 to 5 provinces with the ambitions even to cover it all in the future. And it's actually funded by the education sector. So it's sort of lifelong learning funds for adults in South Africa. Okay, let me finally express my gratitude here to my operational and funding partners, and I'm happy to answer your questions.
Okay, thank you, Sofie. That was really interesting intervention. And I guess for me, I mean, I have lots of questions as well because it's connected to my own PhD research, although in a slightly different way. I'm looking at identity, but it's more political and cultural as opposed to gender identity. And I think you know, in your research, it's interesting to hear that actually, you know, you've put all this work into an intervention and things, but it's still, you know, those views that teachers hold, they're very difficult to change. And I find that, you know, myself with my own research. And I guess I want to ask, I don't know if you know, collected much qualitative data on this, but did you find that teachers tended to, you know, impose their views on the children that they were teaching, or did they what's the word, did you think that their own held views, did they have an impact on the children?
Yes, this is of course the case, but this is a very implicit process. This is something that you take from your own background. A teacher is also a parent, a mother or a father, taking their own implicit views into classrooms. And it's a matter of fact that the toolkit made teachers and school leaders realize of those implicit views. Which actually the 6 key questions that I read, we find actually there that teachers realize that this is actually something that they should tackle. At the same time, we do find indeed the implicit view on gender is determined by nature or birth is difficult to alter. And this is not differently than from research, for example, done in Sweden. Also, an impact study done in Sweden shows that teachers are very flexible in changing views, stereotypes. However, when it comes to a very implicit thing like at birth you're a boy or a girl, this appears to be something difficult.
Yeah, certainly. And I think, you know, when you've held those views for so long, as you've said, it's definitely difficult to change those. But
It
no,
is.
your intervention sounds really interesting. So it does,
Thanks
definitely.
a lot.
And I'm glad that, you know, for me, you know, as a mother as well, you know, it's a positive thing to hear that after the intervention, actually boys and girls played with all toys. You know, that shouldn't be something that should be limited, you know, of your gender, you know. So that's brilliant. So it is. I
Something
haven't got
funny
any.
to think of,
I know,
It's
yeah.
something funny to think of, that a girl doesn't feel like, okay, I cannot play. Maybe they will make fun of me if I do so. Yeah.
Exactly. And those things, you know, even as a young child, you like, if there's, you know, for instance, bullying or whatever connected with that, like that trauma can carry on throughout life. So, no, it's definitely good work and great intervention. So, thank you very much for
Thanks a lot.
presenting that to us. I haven't got any questions for you specifically, Sofie, in the chat box. So, I'm hoping that we'll have some. Oh, we have one now. Sofie, can this be integrated in training or for early ECD teachers, so early childhood development teachers?
Yes, exactly. So the target group, the teachers and the school leaders, were in fact in South Africa ECD practitioners. Now I saved myself. I'm not a native English speaker. I took I took the teachers and the school leaders, which is more easily to pronounce for me. But it's indeed the ECD practitioners, and it's indeed the case that what we would call in Europe kindergarten, that it's there where we implemented the intervention.
Okay, that's brilliant. Yeah, yes, and like you said, it is important to impact those early years if we can. Yeah, and to have this training in teacher education colleges would be excellent. I'm, thinking of myself in Northern Ireland. There's definitely places where we could benefit of training of that type. So thank you very much, Rebecca, for asking that question. I'm sure if there's any more questions, they'll pop up in the chat box. But for now, I am going to move on to our last, but certainly not least, presenter, Li Ping. If you could start to share your screen, that would be great. Thank you so much, Sofie, for sharing your presentation. Li Ping is a PhD researcher at Lanzhou University as well. So really excited to hear about her presentation and her research. She's going to be talking to us about a systematic review on team-based learning. So that'll be interesting.
Hello everyone, could you see my screen?
Not just at the moment, but I'm hoping it will pop up in a little second. Oh, here we go. Yes, we can see it now, Li Ping.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is I'm Li Ping from Lanzhou University. Our team mainly focus on the evidence-based practice of medical education. Followed the presentation of the effectiveness of problem-based learning last year. On behalf of my team, I will share our research on the effectiveness of team-based learning on the medical education. Team-based learning is a structured form of small group learning that emphasizes students' preparation out of class and application of knowledge in class. This method incorporates the main elements of constructivities learning, in which the focus is on the mental representation of information by the learner. And our team analysis of the team-based learning effect on the medical education. In the present review, we included 106 primary studies. Considering the different setting of sample, we used randomized effect model. And the results show that compared with lecture-based learning, the team-based learning has a positive effect on the medical students' academic performance.
Sorry, Li Ping, just to interrupt. I don't know if it's the same for everyone else, but I can't see your slides anymore.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. It's fine.
How about yeah? No,
I can't see them just yet. Sometimes there's a little bit of delay.
oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Don't
Try
worry.
again.
We still have time. You're okay.
Try again. Okay. Yeah. Okay. How about this time?
Yes. Thanks very much, Li Ping. Sorry about that.
Okay. As the effectiveness of team-based learning on non-academic performance, the result of meta-analysis shows that students' team cooperation ability were better than traditional learning, and the self-learning ability is also improved. Besides, the team-based learning could also increase medical students' learning interest and communication ability. And overall, team-based learning has a significant positive effect on medical students' academic and non-academic performance, but the number of primary studies included in our review is less than 10, so more high quality of are also needed to verify its effect. In addition, we have not checked the risk of bias of included study, and this is also our next step. Thanks for your listening. If you have any questions or have interest on our research, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Li-Ping. That was really, really interesting. I think, for me, like I'm used to a very traditional sort of style of teaching and learning, so team-based learning definitely could be the way forward. As someone who's quite new to that world, do you mind? Could you sort of describe to us, like a definition of team-based learning? How is that different from lecture-based learning?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
That's okay. So I'm just asking, what for you, could you define or give us a definition of the difference between lecture-based learning and team-based learning?
Lecture-based learning is all these methods is mentioned on the primary studies. Yeah, and we just extract this data and meta-analysis them.
Oh, perfect. And then you had said at the end that you haven't completed risk of bias on your studies yet. So I'm sure that'll be, interesting when you can assess, your high quality studies and your lower quality studies, within your meta-analysis. So it's a great start on a systematic review. So I can only wish you all the best, with it as you continue on with your research. It'll be really, really interesting at the end when you hopefully publish. It'd be great to have it as a Campbell review. So it.
Yes. Okay. We have not finished our research, so more works should also be done.
Definitely. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'm just going to have a look at the live Q&A box to see if there's any questions for you. I don't think there is just at the moment, but if there's any more, I will surely pick up on those. There was a comment given to Junjie by Rebecca, which I just thought I'd share with everyone else, although you might be able to see it, about reorganizing the non-achievement constructs based on a set of definitions that you select, and not just taking the author's label. So that can be a really good way to categorize and try and develop a sense of homogeneity between the different studies. So I think that could be really useful for your study, Junjie, at the when you get to that stage. So thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's any more questions that anybody else on the panel has for anyone else. If you do, it'd be great to ask them, or if there's any more questions or comments that anybody from the audience wants to ask any of the presenters. It doesn't look like it, so that's okay. But thank you, everybody. Thank you so much to everybody for logging on, for presenting your various pieces of research. I found it all really interesting. I love education, and specifically working with teachers and young children as well. So thank you so much for presenting your systematic reviews and your interventions. I'm sure that they will have an impact on policy as well. So And that's important, you know, really, that's why we do research, isn't it? To try and make the world a better place to live in. So thank you so much to each of our presenters. That was great. And I just want to thank our sponsors for the What Works Global Summit, who have been able to put this together. And thank you to the Campbell Collaboration and Campbell UK and Ireland for hosting this and for putting together all the technology and all of the background work as well. That's been really, really fantastic. So thank you. And I think if there's no more questions or comments, that will maybe just end this session and have a couple more extra minutes before we go to our next session. So thank you very much to all of our presenters again. That was fantastic.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.